Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to use our Igloo set, and for this I'm going to use the Renshaw flower modelling paste, mainly white and just a little piece of black for the penguin. Now you need to open the pack and knead a piece of the paste so it's nice and pliable. I've already done this. You just work it so it's nice and pliable, and then keep the spare paste covered and a little Trex. Now Trex is vegetable shortening, and you need to roll out the paste and don't lift it up and down. Make sure it's stuck down onto the board. And roll it really thin. And then take the cutter and a little of the Trex on there. And at the bottom of the shoe, it's quite detailed, so put a little more on there, a little more Trex. And then place it onto the paste and press firmly all over the cutter, especially around the outside edge, so you get a nice sharp cut. And flick the cutter away, and you can use the paste either cutting more of the same or a selection of the cutters that's in the pack. So this is the little husky. And again, press firmly. And because I haven't lifted the paste, it will stay down on the board, it won't lift into the cutter. So I'm going to cut out a little polar bear. And the little kneeling figure here. Now all the little pieces of paste, the unused pieces, you can use for the smaller items. So the little fish, you can cut out a few of those. And you also have the large and small snowballs. So you can use them as snowballs or snowflakes and just cut those out. Now what I like to do is actually lift these onto a silver board. So firstly, you're just going to remove the paste from around the outside edge of each figure. Put that to one side. Any small pieces, you can either use a cocktail stick or the sharp end of a Dresden tool, just to remove any small pieces that may catch. So take these away. And all the pieces you don't need, just pop back under the cover. Now this is a small piece here that catches in the tail, so just remove that with your cocktail stick or your Dresden tool. And they do come away very easily. Like so. Now there are a couple of small pieces here, so one just between the head and the arm, and another one there. Sometimes you get a small piece there, but they do lift out very easily. And then I'm going to just move these out of the way for a moment and bring in my board. So you can see on here I already have some cut out and I've started painting them. So literally lift them and pop them on there. Now because I've cut out, I've rolled out on Trex or shortening, they won't move. So when I come to paint them, they won't move around, they'll stay there. There's a fine blade underneath. Just move him out the way. them on there. A little space here. Now I'm just going to cut out the igloo because that's slightly different. We build up layers with the igloo. So I'll put those to one side to dry. For the little penguin here, I've done exactly the same thing, but I've used black paste and I've cut out the little penguin. And then I've added some black, a tiny amount to white, and made grey and cut out little grey seals and the larger seal. Because I want to show you about colouring them in later on. So I just cut them out in a light grey. For the igloo, I'm going to, again, roll out on a lightly greased surface and then a little of the shortening on there. You find this in most supermarkets where the butter and fats are kept, so it's easily obtainable. Now press firmly around the outside edge and then lightly on the inner so that we just emboss the pattern without cutting through. And then a sharp flick. Now this part here, I'm going to cut an extra layer to put on so it looks as though it's an inside to the igloo. So again, re-grease the cutter. And just press around that part. So you can leave it at any stage. It's entirely up to yourself how detailed you want this to be. And this one, I'm just going to cut the brick part there. So give a really good press. May have to go around that with my knife. So for the main igloo, just remove the surplus paste. And again, put the spare under cover so it doesn't dry out. So that could go on like that. But if you just use water for sticking and moisten, not the inside there, but just what would be the tunnel. I'm going to take this part away. Now that's not designed to cut, so you may just get a little fluffy edge to that. And if you do with any patchwork cutters, if you do happen to get any fluffy edge, just have a damp brush and just wipe around the edge, and that will take away any little bits. So we also need to remove this part here, so just use your craft knife. Take that away, tidy the cut edge up, and then a little water. Again, started to dry, so I'll just a little more water on there, and very carefully place that on top. Just press it down so that it covers any seams on there. So that just gives a feeling of you could actually go down the tunnel into the igloo. And if you wanted to put a third layer on, it would be this one. So you're working from the background to the foreground. So it would be this one here. So take all these away. And this time we're going to take the inner part of the igloo away. And that part, so it's literally this row of bricks. Doesn't matter if they go on in 2 or 3 pieces because they all join up. Like so. Now, if that was going to go onto a square cake, you could actually leave that onto a sponge to dry. But if it's going on the side of a round cake, then it would be best to, what I'm going to do now, colour it and then attach it to the side while you've still got a little bit of movement in it. Otherwise, when you put it, if it's dried and it goes on the side of a round cake, the ends will stick out. So the choice is yours. So to colour the igloo, I'm just going to lift that with a piece of card. Just slide that underneath. And I'm going to place it onto, now you can have a piece of laminated paper or just place a piece of paper inside a plastic bag. It's the easiest way to colour. They're not going to move around while you're colouring. And I've got some white satin here, and I'm going to put that on, the dust is dry. And just brush that over. Later on, I'll be mixing alcohol with the dust and making a paint solution, but this one goes on dry. It just gives a nice shiny effect and brings out the details. And as I've said, if you're going to place this onto a square cake, then you would take it now, peel it from there, and place it onto a sponge pad, and then you can leave it to dry. If you're going to place it on the side of a round cake, then still place it on the sponge pad, but just leave it for about 10 minutes so it's not quite so floppy, and then you would turn it over, moisten the back with water, and attach that onto your cake. If you want to have a look as though the lights are on, or there's a light on inside, then you can just put a little, I've got some yellow dust here, and I'm just putting a tiny amount inside there. You just blend it in with your finger. But that's entirely up to you. If you want to have that effect, that's fine. And when it's on the side of a cake, you can always brush a little of the yellow down so it reflects down onto the icing. So it looks as though there's a bit of a glow coming out of the igloo. So I've cut out and dried the little black penguin. You can actually cut it in white and paint the black around the outside edge, but I find this much easier if you just roll a very small piece of white and place the penguin cutter on there. Just remove the excess white paste, and then either with a cocktail stick or I use my little pointy end of the Dresden tool just to remove the white outer. Just hold on to the top there as you go round. And then a little water. And place that on top and just push it into shape. Just use your Dresden tool to coax it around. And again, if you have any jagged edges there, because it's not meant to be a cut line, so you will have a certain amount of rough edge. Again, a little damp brush around the edge there to hold it down. And then I mix alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and a little yellow dust and a fine paintbrush, and then just paint in the beak. You can use water to clean your brush, and I have some black dust colour, and I always mix my colours in the lids, because then when the alcohol evaporates away, the colour just goes back to a dust, and you put the lid on and carry on using it in future projects. So just tap on a little dot for the eye, and then he's good to go. So to colour all the pieces, you can either work on the board or take them one by one and put them onto your dusting sheet that I used before for the igloo. So I'm going to take the polar bear, and I'm just going again to brush over with white satin just to give them a nice soft shiny coat. I would use, this is a dusting, an old water brush, but you can use a number 6 or a number 8 paintbrush. That works really well. So I'll go over with that. And then I'm using a finer brush, so I'm using a number 10-0 and a little pink dust colour and alcohol in the lid. And I'm painting the inside the ear. And then the brown dust colour. You only need a tiny drop of the alcohol, but it does dry very quickly, so that's why I use it as opposed to ordinary alcohol. I use the isopropyl alcohol. So onto the nose, and it's much easier to paint with a smaller brush. Don't try and use a large brush. And you can either have a brown mouth, or I'm just going to go back to a little pink smile. And he would be ready to go onto a cookie or a scene on the cake. So I'm just going to put him to one side, and then I'll take the little figure. Clear the brush in water, and I'm using flesh colour, so you choose the flesh colour you want. And a little brown for the hair. And make sure you do go into the embossed line so that you get a nice clean shape. Don't just do sort of in the middle there. The two colours do need to meet. And then into the eye, brown. And then this one has little white teeth. And pink tongue. Just dab that in. And then choose the suit colour. So I'm going to go for a nice blue. Paint that in. And when you paint, go right over the edge. Don't have just the top here and then a white cut edge. So just go all over the edge and down to the fur trim. And you may need to give 2 coats if you wanted a really stronger colour. And I'm going to do the gloves in the same colour, but you can choose whatever colour you like. But again, round the outside, the cut edge, make sure you go right down over there. The trousers. And then an iced coffee colour and a little alcohol for the boots. Again, round that cut edge, it's really important that you take the colour down. Brown, go back to the brown and just touch in the buttons and the sole on the boot. It's all about the detail. Now the white fur, I'm going to add alcohol. So where I've used the white satin for the Igloo, I used it dry and dry for the polar bear because it was a large area, and that was fine. There was no other colour really going on it. But this one, I don't want the white to travel over the hair or the face, so I'm mixing the alcohol and painting that on. I'll just go around like so, all the fur trim again over that cut edge and on the cuffs. And it's really just choosing a nice selection of colours, and might give him some yellow buttons. You could use gold if you wanted, but nice bright yellow buttons on there. And I think that's him complete. As I say, if you feel that it's a little bit patchy or you just want a stronger colour, then you can go over. Once that's dried, just give it a moment or two, and then you can go over again with another coat just to give a neater finish on there. And then again, that's ready to either go on a cookie. You can place them on the side of a cake. You can put little balls of icing behind to raise them up. I'll show you that in a moment. I'll put it on a little plaque. But all the other figures are done exactly the same. Now the fish, I like to take a little fish and put lots of different colours. So I'll put a pink and a little bit of blue. Now these go on dry. So I've got a bit of blue there and just a little lime green. So they're all going on dry. So you've got lots of different colours. We'll call it a rainbow fish. And then with the white satin, dry again, just brush over the whole thing, and that will just soften all the colours and merge them together so that you're just getting a nice sheen like fish when they're wet and then they're coming out the water. You can see lots of different colours on the skin. So you can just colour those any shades you want. Now the little husky, all I've done is mix white and grey, and white and black to make grey, and I painted over, and then pink in the ears. So the painting is exactly the same. Use a fine brush for all of it, the eyes, the body. Don't try and use a larger brush. And once they're dry, you can put them in rows, so you've got like a little husky pack. Now the seals are slightly different, and this is one that I just want to show you here, and that's mixing some of the white. I'm just going to mix it to the side because I want it dry, and a tiny amount of black. I'm going to mix those two together. Just check to see if it's dark enough. No, just needs a little bit more black in there. And some more white. And just take it down to a shade darker than the actual seal, and start to bring that colour, that darker shade, around the edge of the seal. And just keep bringing the black. Onto the edge. And then again, you can use the fine brush and paint in a little pink in the ear, and then black with the alcohol for the nose and the eye, and then go back to pink for I'll put a little pink mouth in. So again, that's ready to go on the cake, and you do exactly the same colouring technique with the little seals. So you've got the baby seals here, so you could have a nice little iceberg with the seals on top. So all the figures are painted exactly the same way. To attach the pieces onto cookies or onto the side of a cake, I'm going to use a little royal icing, and you can always use this for snowy effect as well. So take a small amount, and I use a paper bag. And never overfill a bag. Fold over left, right, and roll it down, and that will give a nice pad to push against, especially if you're piping any fancy shapes. And then I'm just going to cut the end off there. Now I've already have an iced cookie here, so I'm just going to pipe a little of the icing onto there. Might need a slightly larger hole in the bag. And then take the little figure and pop that on. And before, when I said about raising them into the foreground, instead of using royal icing, you would just place 2 small balls of sugar paste there, and that would hold it off the cookie or the cake. So just press that down, and then you can pipe a little royal icing along the base there, and smooth it with a knife. Rough it, or not smooth it, rough it with a knife. And use a little pot of sprinkles. Just to put on there. Just to tap on so that you get a nice snowy effect. And also then you can add the little snowballs that we've cut out, or you can make a little pile of them around the base and just create nice little scenes. I hope you enjoyed watching, and if you have any questions about this set or any patchwork cutters, please let us know, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.